I overheard my sister-in-law plotting with her best friend, laughing about how funny it would be if I fell while pregnant and harmed my baby, so she could steal my husband. Days later, my husband exposed her true colors at a family dinner. 32F, and I'm currently 6 months pregnant. This is mine and my husband 30M, let's call him D, D's first child, and both of us are an equal mix of excited, scared and hopeful. D and I have been married for 3 years, and I have to say that he is an amazing man. I grew up with a very distant family focused on my performance in academics, and the number of trophies I brought in, while D grew up in a big family with 2 brothers and a sister. He has a loving, warm personality that often makes him the center of attention. I mean, when we were dating, and even now, I can catch girls on the street doing a double take or making eyes at him, but he shares his warmth with me and me alone, and his family also makes me feel welcome. I can confidently say that I'm probably closer to my in-laws than my actual parents right now since I never had any siblings either. I did try really hard to gel with my brother-in-law, male, 25, and sister-in-law, female, 28. While the brothers-in-law are very nice and think of me as their big sis, my sister-in-law was always a little distant with me. Dee says that she's just uncomfortable around me since I'm a city girl, and they grew up on a farm in Minnesota. Maybe he suggested she doesn't really have a lot in common with me, and that's why there's not much interaction between us. That does make sense to me, so I settled into a healthy and respectful distance from my sister-in-law. We're family, but won't go out of our way to visit each other or know intimate details about each other's lives. However, sometimes everyone has to get up close and personal. The parents often organize big trips to random tourist sites as a family vacation. Since I was pregnant, we didn't go too far. I've settled in Minnesota with my hubby. We decided on visiting the capital and checking out the Cathedral of St. Paul, making it a weekend getaway. Taking an RV, we drove up to the city and settled into a lovely Airbnb as our home base. Due to a miscalculation of available rooms, D had to share with his 2 brothers, and I ended up being shifted to my sister-in-law's room. This was probably the most awkward setup for me, but I viewed the silver lining as a way of getting to know my sister-in-law better. In fact, she was quite nice to me and pretty decent to share a room with. However, she had one weird habit. Every time she took a phone call, she would go out of the room or sometimes ask me to leave. I assumed that she had a boyfriend, or wanted to take a private call, but I glanced at her phone and noticed that someone called Bessie 3 had been calling her. Like the last 5 calls were from this number. Now Bessie has been my sister-in-law's bestie since high school, but she's also a bit of a running joke in the family. The reason being, she's unhealthily obsessed with D, like she had a crush on him during high school but never grew out of it. We know about this because she often comes to the in-laws' place during parties, and every time D is in the room, she gets flushed and starts stuttering. I'm not the jealous kind of wife. I mean, it'd be tough to be a jealous wife with the kind of attention D gets. So I just play off her behavior. I remember thinking back then it might be part of the reason my sister-in-law doesn't really interact with me, because Bessie so desperately wants to take my place. She must be stuck between a rock and a hard place. Teasing her gently, I asked her if her friend was calling to ask about D, and when my divorce was going to happen. She laughed awkwardly and changed the topic, but something in her look was off. It's almost as if I had stumbled upon some big secret. I put it at the back of my mind though, since there was a lot going on during the vacation, and I wanted to enjoy it. During the day everyone went to visit the cathedral together, but afterwards, Dee and I went off on our own to explore the city and do some shopping. It was late evening by the time we got back, and everyone else was already back at the Airbnb. I trudged back up to my room and just outside the door caught my name from inside. I could hear my sister-in-law on call, and I'm sure it was Bessie again. I wanted to turn around and wait in the living room while she finished up her call, but curiosity got the better of me. I mean, I had heard my name after all. So I stood by the door and listened in. This was what I heard. Yeah, she's out with D. Yeah, shopping and seeing the city. So boring they've become. I swear my brother's so dull after he got married. Miss City Slicker has changed him for the worse. What's that? Yeah, I do in 3 months, haha, it would be funny. I get what you're saying. If she slipped or something happened, they'd probably be through. Maybe I'll push her down the stairs myself. She's too soft anyway. I mean, if that happens you could always ask D out after a few months. You'd be a much better fit for the family than her. I was shocked. I mean, that's putting it mildly. How could someone say something so horrible about anyone? I turned around and went to my husband's room, where I found him and my brother-in-law chilling. I couldn't stop the tears at this point, and just fell into his arms crying. Without being forceful, he asked his brothers for privacy and asked me what happened. I told him what I had overheard and what it meant, and he got deathly quiet. I'd never seen him like this before. Gently he said that he'd make up an excuse and we could go home. We booked a chateau back to our town, and I spent the whole ride overthinking and stressing out. After reaching home, Dee told me that he would make things right next week Sunday. I had no idea what he was planning, but his behavior made me feel like my reaction was valid, and I trusted him. I knew I was in the right because he finally told me what he had in mind, and it sounded like a perfect plan. Come next Sunday, I waited to see it all unfold. Firstly, he had asked his parents and siblings to come over for a nice roast followed by movie night. Dinner was perfectly fine. While I felt nauseous just seeing my sister-in-law, I powered through it. Then we got ready for movie night. Dee had set up a projector that faced one of the living room walls, and it looked like it was going to be a magical experience. He hooked up his laptop, and instead of pulling up Netflix, opened a folder titled, Surprise. It was filled with screenshots he had with Bessie. Dee ran through them one by one, starting off the whole show by saying, "Everyone, this isn't going to be a movie, but Mom, Dad, I'm going to show you why after today I will never talk to your daughter again, at least not until she apologizes on her knees." Sister-in-law was staring at him confused, not really knowing what was going on, until he pulled up the first screenshot. All the chats were from after we left vacation early, and Dee had basically used his charm over Bessie to make her admit that she and sister-in-law often joked about my baby miscarrying. It was much worse than that one time I'd overheard them. It was apparently a running joke. Dee had played into it, trying to act like he was in a loveless marriage. Little did Bessie know that he and I used to look at her chats and laugh. LOL. It didn't stop there though. Bessie basically admitted that sister-in-law was telling her that she should shoot her shot with Dee. It was pathetic, and Bessie was definitely oversharing after Dee tricked her into thinking he was looking for an out in this relationship. As they scrolled through each image while slowly telling his family what he had done, and what I'd heard during vacation, the atmosphere in the room reached a boiling point. Sister-in-law finally screamed, "Turn it off," and kicked the projector off its stand. Mother-in-law and father-in-law started shouting at her after this, telling her that she was a terrible person. That wasn't how they had raised her. Brother-in-law and Dee were kind of just watching, enjoying the drama. Sister-in-law looked at me and said, "You nosy BH, we were just kidding around. And why do you have to take it so seriously? This is why you're not meant for us, you can't even take a damn joke." Dee immediately rushed to my defense, cursing her out. I didn't need him to speak for me though, because I calmly said, "Anyone who jokes about their niece dying is a shitty person. And you need to accept that." This was also the first time anyone except Dee and me knew the gender of our baby, and that added chaos to the whole scene. It ended with sister-in-law being escorted out, mother-in-law in tears about her granddaughter, and everyone else just exhausted from what had happened. That Sunday dinner led to a lot of tension in the family, and sister-in-law has basically lied to the entire extended family about Dee and me ganging up on her, leading to even more of a war zone on the family group chat. It's adding a lot of tension to our lives right now, and I'm thinking about what sister-in-law said about being too sensitive. Should I just have let it slide?